All right. So today, what? Today let's talk about empathy and compassion. Okay? Empathy and compassion. Really, really good stuff to talk about. One reason I'm thinking of this is because we're still hearing a lot of people not understanding empathy or compassion and sort of misusing the words out there in the world. Last week, you might recall, we were speaking about the difference between our lower self and higher self, but we added one that, for some reason, people don't talk about. How many of you have ever heard people go, lower self, highest self? You almost never hear highest self, which to me is no accident. It's because the highest self is the God aspect, and people tend to leave God out whenever and wherever they can. The ego will just find subtle ways to nix that from your sentences, your statements, your life, your living. It's just another way to sort of sabotage that. You have a highest self. Your higher self is just, better than your lower self. But it's higher. Higher doesn't mean that's it. There's one more. Highest. Lower self, lower three chakras. Higher self, your heart center. Highest is the divine trinity in our head and neck chakras, okay? So, besides that, when we go to learn and study and understand things like compassion and empathy, guess what? You can learn them from the lower self because, for example, a person can be totally broken and not understand true compassion. They can mistake sympathy, pity for compassion. That's not your higher self nor your highest, right? So there's a lower self, a higher self, and a highest self. Your higher self, located in your heart center, has two aspects to it, two facets. One of them being your version of life, living, even compassion, love. We have our version, the human. So half of my higher self is still human driven. It's higher than my lower self, but it's still human. Still only understanding from my experience, my human perceptions. The higher aspect of my heart is a mirror on which the light of God can shine down and give me a higher version, a higher light, higher understanding. Is that all making sense? All right. Given that, then when we go to understand things like empathy and compassion, I can understand those too, like everything else, from a lower standpoint, a higher standpoint, or another higher standpoint that's even higher than this side. One side or the other, doesn't matter, right? So when we learn to understand or study things like, and this higher aspect where God reaches down and is shining new light and inspiration into us, even that isn't the highest. Remember, the highest is up here. But this is the highest a human would be able to know the light of God. I call it a reflection. Shades of God, okay? A reflection of God rather than the real thing that happens in oneness with God. Now, in our heart center, even in the highest side of our heart center, in our heart center, we still, the highest feelings a human being can feel would include unconditional love. Things like compassion. But those are not the highest. Unconditional love still implies that there's a conditional love too. Unconditional love is still not total, complete love divine. But as human beings, while you're on earth, the highest emotions you're going to feel would be things like unconditional love. True empathy, true compassion. All heart-centered things. There are other feelings that are higher, but they're not human feelings. They're divine feelings. Humans can feel compassion. God doesn't actually have to feel compassion. If it feels compassion, it's not done the same way humans feel compassion. The symbolism of Kuan Yin. Often you'll see a hand of hers, reaching, or even Buddha. You often see two hand mudras. One, sometimes you'll see Buddha hand down and hand up. You'll sometimes see Kuan Yin. with one hand doing a gesture and the other holding a jar or a bottle of some kind. And then what that means is I am feeling what you're going through, but I'm extending compassion to you to help you out. In divine consciousness, I can't perceive you as having a problem that needs compassion. You get the next level up? See, that's the other level. And people don't talk about that one much. People will say compassion is the highest emotion. It is for humans. I ask God, show me what you would have me feel. And it takes me to another level. By asking God, see, if I try to know it, I myself can only go so high up. In the humility of I don't know, a higher I am presence can shine light in the other half of our heart. And I can see reflections of something greater. But to know that something greater, it has nothing to do with our thinking processes, nor can the human brain handle it 24/7 for the rest of your life. The absolute love of God it's not involving feeling even empathy and compassion. It's beyond that, as I shared, okay? So first of all, compassion. There's authentic compassion and there's non-authentic. Empathy, there's authentic and there's not authentic. Not authentic would mean anything that's a limited version of it. That's one way you can kind of, practice discerning one from the other. But human beings, no matter what, they have this compulsion to say, well, if I'm going to feel something, I'm going to feel it from my opinions of that topic. I will decide if you need compassion and empathy. But I'm all messed up. Who am I to determine what you need? I mean, that's, come on. Oh, well, I know because I'm a Reiki master. Stop talking. Just stop talking. Everybody's a Reiki master. The guy that rotates the tires at Big O, he's a Reiki. Everybody's a Reiki master. That doesn't mean you're really plugged in. Now, I'm not saying Reiki masters aren't. It's a choice they can make. The title doesn't guarantee it. So, But there's authentic versions and there are non-authentic versions. Let's start with compassion. So, authentic and non-authentic. Non-authentic compassion means I see that you're hurting. I see a victim and or a victimizer. And I draw this experience, this situation, and the people involved into my compassionate heart. And I give you as much love and healing as possible. I transform it. It's the non-authentic would be like feeling pity for you. Oh, you're going through that? Oh, hold on a minute. I'm going to use my advanced compassionate exercise of meditation to transform how screwed up you are. So hold on. Give me a minute. See, but it still perceives a problem. And that's better than no compassion. So false compassion is like pitying people. There is a higher form, which of course is like a Buddhist form. That's a more authentic form of compassion. Which is like saying, I really feel for you. I truly feel for you. And I'm going to share with you because empathy is like what I feel from you. Compassion is what I return to you, what I give to you in return for what I'm feeling. So empathy is sort of the feeling in, compassion, the action taken. So they're like two sides of the same coin, right? So it's really, really cool, but there's a distinct difference. If you're recognizing you're feeling like sympathy or pity, stop right there, catch yourself, clean it up. I'm too involved. I'm feeling pity. Now, how do I know that's not the highest level? It's very simple. If I see myself feeling pity, a false form of, empathy and or compassion, I recognize that's not actually God's will. When I claim to be, plugged in and I'm really great at empathy or at compassion, look at how you're doing it, and it'll tell you whether it's more an authentic version. So I set aside my version of what I'm seeing or perceiving in you, and I'm saying, no, God, I would like help in seeing this differently. And what happens is you shift from lower self-perceptions of a person's problems to a higher, but not highest yet, a higher perspective of how to deal with this. Is that all making sense so far? All right. So another way to know that compassion is a limited form, I mean, just that word, limited. If I'm feeling like somebody's got some really big problems and somebody else lesser, but I'm going to work with this on empathy or compassion, the very idea that I'm determining that their problems are greater or lesser means that I'm still giving them value and power. Watch for these subtle little sabotages that the ego throws in. Start with, I don't know anything. All right? Start with humility, and it'll get you more quickly centered into what's really happening for a person. But I'm going to explain this in a way that sort of takes this higher and higher as we go. So real compassion basically means having compassion not for the problem or the victim. If I say, let me do a compassion exercise, oh, you poor thing, you poor thing, you poor thing, I'm not getting it. False empathy is sinking in the quicksand with everybody. I mean, wow. And that's such a buzz phrase. Everybody's an empath. What does that mean? Look at the definition. Go and read online. 5 signs of being an empath. And it's going to be like, you're a victim of everybody's emotions. That's not true empathy. It just means you're codependent. You have no boundaries. That's what it means. You're messed up. When your nervous system is hyperstimulated by everybody else, just stop and say, does that sound like God's will? No. And if it's not God's will, it must not be authentic. Okay. It's okay, Michael. So, real compassion means that it's not about, I feel compassion because I see a victim and a victimizer. More authentic compassion is this. I feel for the fact that you even believe you can go through such a thing. See the difference? I feel compassion, I feel empathy and compassion for the very idea that you believe something has power over you. I get it, and I'm going to help with objective prayers and goodwill. If you see the victim or victimizer and try to help them, you've already affirmed they're sick. And now you're going to try to help them, which is countering or contradictory to the idea that you just said they're sick. Oh, look at that poor victim, which you're inflaming, you're, like the bellows to a fire. You're inflaming that they're a victim and that they're broken. And then you're going, but I have some water to help put that out. It's like a wash at the end of the day. You took them 2 steps forward and 2 steps back, or 2 back and then 2 forward. So it didn't really help. I need to see this differently. I'm calling with my heart. Help me to see it differently. The clouds part, the light of God shines down, and I start to go, I don't see a victim and victimizer. I only see a brother, sister who is equally one with God, as is Christ and so on, but they have forgotten momentarily. In other words, I see it not as a real problem, but as a temporary belief system. It's a whole way of looking at this differently. That's a little bit more authentic compassion. And it might seem like, well, I don't get it, or it doesn't matter. It really does make a difference. But again, any form of empathy and compassion, at least you're trying to do something. I wouldn't shame you for trying. But do consider taking it out of the mud, out of the yucky stuff of this world and giving it power and then trying to fix it. True compassion, I get it a bit more now. You're not a messed up person that I'm feeling for. You're a holy child of God who has forgotten. Because you forgot, that's what I'm feeling for. Not the symptoms of your forgetting. That's what false empathy would be, and false compassion. I would really like to help how messed up you are. Instead, it's, I get it. You're not messed up, but you have forgotten who you really are. And for that, I feel for you. And my compassionate healing now is going to be, instead of a blessing of love like we think from a human standpoint, real compassion is going to be guess what? Who you really are. Oh my God, isn't this exciting? Why do you think the word passion is in there? There shouldn't be depression. It's not compression. Half of the word depression, it's compassion. There should be, guess what? Oh my God, I just felt empathetically this wave of something that you're hurting. Okay, I get it. True empathy, you don't jump in the quicksand with them. The wave comes, oh, something's happening. Guess what? It's impossible that something have power over you. Passionate compassion for each other. So there's a code to it. A passion that we're sharing. And then when it comes to empathy, there's false forms. Again, the people that go, God, it's all over the internet, right? I hear this from people all the time. They send in letters and emails and, hey, some teacher said on the internet, empathy. What is empathy? There's sympathy. We've done talks just on this topic, but it's not the same as sympathy. Empathy is supposed to be that you are in your center observing a situation with unconditional love. That does not fit the same definition as people going, oh, I'm such an empath. I can barely survive each day. I walk out the door and I'm just barraged with people's problems because I'm such a holy sponge. That's like saying that because you do acid and see colors that you're an artistic mystic. You're not. You're just an addict. God, this is just what I'm channeling. This isn't my fault. No. But that's seriously. So to say empathic, if you say, and yet you sound like a victim. Oh, woe is me, because I'm an empath. When you say it like that, that can't be God's will. That can't be God's version of empathy. If you're suffering, how can it be God-related? It's supposed to be centered in unconditional love, and I offer prayers and whatever suggestions. This beautiful presence that you're holding. I don't want to come across like I'm saying you're bad or wrong for misrepresenting empathy, but it's basically codependent. A person who claims to be an empath by taking everybody's energy, how is that not looking codependent? Read the definitions of these things, and that's what you're going to get. That's codependence. A person without boundaries tends to either blast into people's lives without boundaries, or they tend to let other people blast into theirs. Neither of those can be God's will. So God, show me true empathy, and that would result in you're going to stay in your center. The compassion is coming. Empathy first. What are you feeling? Oh, a barrage of feelings. Then, my beloved child, it sounds like you need healing. If you're being barraged, if your nervous system is overstimulated with negative energy, that can't be God's will. And I know, and I swear to you, I know and I understand how that might make some people feel, especially if you're one who tends to walk around telling everybody how empathic you are. Or if you're leading workshops on it. Hi, everybody. I'm an empath, a master empath. I've done level 3 in empath hyperstimulation. And I can teach you a thing or two. And everybody's, in their audience. And it's group insanity. Empathy means I'm sitting in God and receiving. Not I'm in your nervous system and you're in mine. Centered in God. So you still receive messages, so to speak, but not hyperstimulation with true empathy. You receive information. Your nervous system will translate some of it, but it doesn't barrage you. It doesn't beat you up. Let's say it's almost like a superhero spider sense, Spider-Man sense. It's like, hey, what's going on? I can sense things. You're in a human body. So, of course, sometimes even doing your best to be a centered empath, you're sometimes going to still get some of that stimulation, hyperstimulation from the world. You're still going to sometimes, into sadness, into pity. It's going to happen because we're humans and we slip a little. But if you want to be a true empath, know your center and forgive yourself, catch yourself and forgive yourself when you slip. Don't live in the slipping out of line and call that good. Know what is good and then do your best to stay in the goodness. I do care about people, empathic. I do want to do my best to be helpful, empathic. I will not jump in the quicksand with their pain. I will also not empower how, if somebody's sad, I won't give that much power. I hear you. Oh, I'm really angry today. Well, tell me about it so I can get angry too. That's not empath. But an empath is also not going to say, oh, you should not be angry. Shaming them is not compassion. The empath stays in their center and hears what's going on. A really healthy mommy and daddy vibe has glimpses of being a true empath. A really healthy mommy, daddy. So that when the child's going, Mommy, I cut my leg and I'm going to die. Oh, honey, I'll take care of it. It's okay. That is like a healthy empath compassion. You're, not going into, oh my God, you're right. That little cut, honey, you might bleed to death. Mommy, help me. I can't. I'm freaked out. That's unhealthy empath. Okay? All this screaming has got me, freaked out. No. Find your center. Be the healthy mommy, daddy archetype, healthy version, and bring that to the world. I hear what's happening. You're not going to come across cold, but you're also not going to jump in with them. Something in the center, that's a bit more true empathy. And when it comes to compassion, like I said, the same thing. The actions I'm going to take are not going to be hyper this way or that way. Somewhere in here, I'm going to offer unconditional love. You don't want that? Okay, I'm still shining that light. You absorb it whenever you want. Stay objective. You don't get upset when they don't take it. You don't get hurt. This is who I am. If I've chosen to plug into the I am of God, then I am the light of the world. If you're living in darkness, I'm just going to shine light. I'm not going to judge you for having darkness, and I'm not going to judge how much darkness you have. Usually I'm like the light of the world, but man, you're in such darkness, I can't help you. That's not true compassion. You learn to see things as they truly are. But how? Through your means or through God's? Go to God. You show me. And, powerful things happen when we learn that humility and surrender and say, God, how would you have me do this? Or how would you have me see this? So there's a clear distinction. The lower self feeds into, don't call that compassion and empathy. The lower self's version is all messed up. It's all twisted around. It's all misperceived and misrepresented. See through it. I hope some of you did already see through this. But if you didn't, now we got it. Then there's my heart's version, and that's higher. But one side of my heart will still perceive empathy from a limited version. So it might still come from buying into some of what they need and their pain and that sort of thing, buying into it a little and blessing them with some compassion. But it's still a little bit of the human in there. You go to the other side of your heart and you're asking for guidance. The asking for guidance is what moves you from your higher self to your higher connected to God self, but not all the way up yet. It's higher. So something's shifting in me. Just wave a hand, have any of you guys already practiced the difference that I'm talking about? Anybody? You've seen it, you've felt it here and there. Great, great. When you see the difference, it becomes quite contrasted, doesn't it? I mean, once you've tasted the other, it should be challenging for you to ever want to go back the other way and settle for human versions of this. It's like, no, I truly, now I'm starting to understand. And that's when all of your teaching and your learning and your meditations have started filtering in to making your soul say, I just can't picture settling anymore. Even with the concept of love. There's human love down here, unconditional love here, and love divine here. So even love can be, humanized, which means put into a limited form. The love of God is not actually called unconditional love. There's conditional, unconditional, and divine. I will not be able to hold the frequency of love divine 24/7 through my entire life. Because to be in that version of love, you will burst into light. You cannot hold a body, because the body is a testament of I'm a limited being. I can be a limited being and know limited love. That makes total sense. I can even be a limited being and feel unconditional love. I can get away with that for a while. But even unconditional sometimes, slips into conditional. Codependent relationships and all these things. I'm doing my best to be in unconditional love, but it's 24/7. It's not easy. But some people do it, and they're living masters. It's great. But even the living master shifts from what I think is unconditional love on one side of my heart to what God tells me is unconditional love. But it's still a reflection because God's still telling me. When I really get it, I ascend here to the real deal. Love divine. Capital L, capital D. It's like boom. And I can have that when I'm ready to release the body. In the meantime, I'm experiencing the highest my human self can know, which is unconditional love. All making sense with that? So this same concept I'm sharing about love divine, unconditional love, look how consistent this all is. Very, very consistent. There's three aspects of myself. Lower, higher, highest. There's different ways you can understand things in life. Lower, higher, highest. Love, lower, higher, highest. It's all very consistent. Some of us would like to think that we're so incredible that we're always up here. Now, what do? You just smile. There are people that will come up to you, like I jokingly did with Robert. Hey, Robert, my guides are saying that shirt's for me. There are people that do this. They'll email you. They'll call you. Hey, my guide said, you owe me $1 million from another lifetime. Really? Now, how do you dispute that when they're saying, my divine I am said? That ain't your divine I am. That's your human I am not. Let's call it your ain't. I wouldn't say that to them because to humiliate them or call them, it just adds more darkness for them. Listen with true empathy. Respond with true compassion. I understand, and I'll sit with that and think about that. Or whatever you feel like saying. But in this world, people would like to think that everything they're doing is always the highest. It's love divine. It's, when someone's, attracted to you, when people say, I do at the altar, it's not usually love divine. Humans usually do the human part. Human love, human versions of compassion, which are false, limited, human versions of empathy, which are false and limited. But if you're on the path long enough, you should start hearing about a more authentic version. You should start being attracted more to an authentic version. You should start wanting to live more of an authentic version. If you're getting ticked off or triggered by me describing this, then you're still down here and you're feeling called out. If you really are ready for the real deal, you're going, this is exciting. You don't have to shame yourself for having done limited versions. Just get excited about, I'm ready to go. Wow, it sounds like I'm ready for another level. Call this a calling. Clarion call to your soul. Come forward. Let's all go to a new level. It's not about shaming the false levels. Just see through them and kind of laugh. Yeah, that was me. I remember a couple of gals that attended a lot of classes back in the early 90s. And they had this propensity to, their guides kept telling them things. And their guides were telling them to be in love with, let's call it public figures that they will never meet. But they would sit there going, oh yeah, because my guidance, and I'm really in love, and they just don't know it yet, that public figure. And they're sending them letters, you may not know me, you never met me, but, You're supposed to be, you're meant to be with me. They have people that read those things and shred them. It's just considered loony. But these two gals were convinced, and they would reach out, they would email, not get something, or their emails weren't really happening, but they'd write letters, not get something back, and they would crash and get depressed. And then the same people with the same pattern started becoming healers. They started doing healing work. And I would hear them having conversations before I started a class, and you would hear this, oh yeah, and I worked on this person, and oh God, my energy was all drained afterwards, but I did such a great job. And I'm just, finally I decided, let's talk about, as though I didn't have a, purpose for it. And I'm like, let's talk about this. And I said, when you feel this and you feel this and you feel drained when you're doing healing work, how could it be God if it's having a negative effect on you? Now, we all have had this. I'm not shaming us. But if this is your general way of doing healing, oh, I did such profound healing today that a leg fell off. That's not good. You sound like you're having those after effects of medicines they advertise on TV. Yeah, right. That's what it sounds like. Oh yeah, I did such holy work today. I lost a limb. That can't be God. Now, I'm not shaming you for it. I want to tell you about the other so you go there. Did you know there's also doing healing work where it doesn't take a toll on you? You actually feel better? There's a novel concept. If the light of God is coming through you, you should gain a bit. That doesn't mean you're wrong for having felt the other. It just means that you need an attitude adjustment, a belief system adjustment. And it might be that you need to start owning your value. Instead of the nun from another lifetime where you're not allowed to be paid, where you're not allowed to be happy, you have these old vows as a priest, a nun, a monk, or whatever it is, and you're carrying that into your current healing work, but with the belief system, I have to go and onward Christian soldiers, and I've got to go out and do God's work until the day I die, and hopefully at that point God will have such pity upon me. It's not that way. We're supposed to be excited, standing in the light. You deserve it. And if you don't get that, then you should work on your deservability. I deserve to be able to be objective and truly empathic and not beat up. I deserve, by God's standards, by God's will, to be truly compassionate and know how to extend love to others, including myself. That love, some of it's supposed to stick. So all the gold that's pouring through me, the light, golden light of God to others, some of that gold dust ends up sticking. Just it becomes part of me. It becomes integrated. All that I would wish for others is something I become. That's true empathy, true compassion. And true empathy and compassion cannot involve you being separate from the person you're observing and better than them. I heard you're really messed up. Well, I can center myself into a profound level of empathy and compassion and help you out. As soon as I see that there's a you, I need help. There needs to be a true attitude. If you're truly empathic and compassionate, your attitude will be, we're in this together, you and I. And I will be the one who speaks for us today, feeling this, sharing that, beautiful. But if I slip, I too will need to call for some help. See, there's not a superiority there. How can I be helpful today? Truly humble people. There needs to be a humility to be truly empathic and compassionate. But the humility is not a false humility that makes you a bad person. My humility simply means I've got my ego in check. Blessed are the meek means I see through my ego and I know how to set it aside. Blessed are the meek is a powerful statement. It's like saying, good job, dude. I'm paraphrasing, but good job, eh? Like good job. Yes, you did it. You saw how your ego was infiltrating and you set it aside and said, humbly, how can I be helpful? Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth, which means when I see my ego and see through it and put it aside and focus on the light of God, you will inherit the earth, meaning you'll be given all the power you need to do anything, even in this world. Things will not have the same power they seemingly once had. Okay? Do me a favor, please. Take a few centering breaths. We're going to share a nice meditation together. Part of it will be sort of a education, and part of it will be a letting go and experience. Let's start off with this. First, just breathing in the sense of gratitude. Anything you heard today that made sense for you, just breathe that in gratefully. Now take a moment to contemplate what false empathy looks like. False empathy. I sort of described it, but just your best guess. What does false empathy look like? You know, the hyper-stimulated, the taking on everybody's vibes. People are down, they draw you down, they push and pull your energy. Codependent-like behaviors. Just take a look at that. The effects on your nervous system. Your best guess. And then ask yourself, as you're seeing this, ask yourself, does this feel like it's God's will for you? Rather than someone like me telling you, just ask yourself, does this feel like God's will? The pushing, pulling, that's stimulating my nervous system. They're down, so I get taken down. Does it feel right for you? Does it resonate with peace and joy? And if you can identify that, then you're already able to identify what is of the lower self. The lower self not to be cursed, the lower self that's waiting for the real self to shine light further down into our humanness. Do the same thing with compassion. Can you identify false versions of compassion? Which is like when you start to pity or feel sorry for people. Notice as soon as you do it, oh, that poor person. Oh, that terrible news they received. When you're doing that, notice how you're saying they. What you're doing subconsciously is pushing them away. They have a challenge. And you notice you're not going with them? That's not true compassion. Is it God's will for you to feel sorry for people? It might seem like it. Well, of course. God would want me to feel sorry for... Think about it more deeply. You feeling sorry, you feeling dropped energetically towards a feeling of someone, does that really sound like it's God's will? Again, you decide, please. And then let's take it a little higher. Let's look at this from our higher self, the first half of our higher self, the human part. So this is in our heart center. So imagine that you're standing in your center, truly loving and caring about other people, but without losing your sense of balance and safety and center. Truly feeling care for others. That's a healthier version of empathy and compassion. So see yourself doing that for a moment. You practice this with an actual situation in your life. Look at people you lately have felt sorry for. You felt, they call it bad for that person. But now look at this version. I truly care. But you're not jumping in or falling into the quicksand with them. Feel like you have a deep understanding, and this is important, a deep understanding of what's really going on for this person. That what they're going through is something that they feel like they need to go through based on their belief systems. So understanding does help to bring out compassion and empathy. I get that, see, not good or bad, I just get that this is where they're at right now. That's good. That's the heart center. Now let's go to the second half of the heart center and make a slight but major adjustment. So try this one on for size. So now we're not doing our version of what they need. You see, before I was saying, imagine what you would feel. Now I'm asking to do the following. Imagine what God-centered empathy and compassion look like. God-centered. We're not all the way up in the God center, but it's shining down into one half of our heart. So what can you imagine being God-centered empathy and compassion? What would it look like? If you allow yourself to determine the problem and the solution, then you're not yet doing the God aspect. There has to be a humility of, I don't know. God, how would you have me see the situation? Literally practice this with a situation in anybody in your life right now. Instead of saying, I need to know how to help them fix them, you're staying out of the picture now. You're asking God to shine its light into your heart and guide you. How would you have me be empathic to them or compassionate for them? And let that come like an organic process right now. Really do that. When we get to this level, we become clear that there is no issue in others that needs empathy or compassion. We're no longer assigning definitions or words like they have a problem and they need empathy. Now, they're beyond even the need for empathy and compassion. Now you're doing the God work. How would you have me see them? I'm going to see myself and others at such a high level of pure light and love, they're already healed and whole. Not they need lower compassion and empathy, higher compassion and empathy. Now, that's not there. They need nothing. So imagine these people in that state of needing nothing. I'm not sending them compassion. I'm imagining that they begin to shine. There's a spark of light in the core of their being, and it starts to shine brighter and brighter and brighter. See that. See that spark of light just becoming this full blaze of light. I mean, what greater gift can you give them but the remembrance of who they really are? To give them compassion is still helping to fix a problem. Now, see them beyond any possible problem. Imagine that light growing and growing and growing till it completely engulfs the person in a beautiful way, delivers them into who they really are. Do it for your child, your parent, your friend, whomever it is. Do it for a group of people. Beyond the pity, try this. This is divine work versus human. Do this with politicians, especially the ones you think don't deserve it. Do this with world leaders. Do this with religious leaders. Do it with people in past history. Do it with people from your past, ancestors, with everybody. Not just people you think are bad. Also, Do this with people that you think are victims and that were really good people, but victims. If you see them as victims, they're going to remain victims. See the holiness in them. That gives them power and heals the victim energy. Even if it's a child of yours, that poor little thing, a grandchild, a great-grandchild, oh, that poor thing, their parents are not very good, and I feel so bad for that poor little kid. Now it stays a poor little kid. Yep. Start imagining the Christ presence in them. Birth the Christ presence in them. So this light grows and grows, and it just bursts. They become the living Christ. And they become immune, which will be proven eventually, to the stuff their parents do. Picture this. And that light you're seeing in them becomes so grand and great and present that it also engulfs you. Picture that. The light I affirmed in you, I now receive as well. Oh my goodness. I thought I was the healer doing this for you. But all that you gain now takes me up too. All of us in the light of God. And as long as you're not in your head, right now you should start to feel something called gratitude. You just made a difference in their life. They should start feeling grateful. They're making a difference in yours. You should start feeling grateful. They'll feel grateful. You'll feel grateful. I promise you, God itself will feel grateful. So we're all basking in the light of God. Then we're all basking in gratitude for our remembrance. Now, honestly, take a look at this. Do you see anything or anyone that still needs empathy or compassion? That's when you'll know you've really done real work with empathy and compassion. Because when you're done, it's not needed. And so it is. Anyway. Oh, it's good, man. Good stuff. I love that, because a really good spiritual center anywhere in the world, and including Sedona, there are people that'll talk, like, let's talk about compassion. They'll tell you about compassion. They'll tell you how compassionate they are. They'll tell you the compassion of Buddha's heart and all that. But first of all, it's still mixed up with human versions. A good teacher needs to split those and say, hey, let me just show you. There's this, instead of just all jumbled. But also, the average center is going to be okay with just that and not go, did you know that there's the lack of compassion, there's the heart compassion. Did you know that there's another one? Did you know that there's one where you don't end up feeling anything like compassion because there's no problem? Now, I'm not talking about being in denial. Somebody runs over your foot. Oh, there's no problem. I will not need to go to the hospital and get my foot repaired. That's denial. I'm talking about deep in the soul, you feel a celebration. Isn't it wonderful that even though we go through this, seems to be that in reality, nothing has power over us? You're celebrating this inevitable awareness that everybody will come to. You're celebrating it. It's right to celebrate it. And some people are going to go, there's something wrong with you. You're not getting engaged with us. You're not getting upset like we are. It must be because you're in one of those new age, they'll judge you. So be careful to not put yourself in harm's way and get all judged about it, but rather just see it. At the very least, see it and smile inside. On the outside, when in Rome, go ahead, unless you feel guided to do something else. People will get upset They're watching the news and they're arguing with each other about politics or economy or whatever it happens to be. Let them do what they're going to do. Just smile. Maybe not hang out there too often. But if you do, just smile. And you're not there to push buttons. You're not there to prove to them how centered and holy you are. If I were sitting there, God forbid, and somebody was watching the news, God forbid, and I was, for some reason, stuck to be there for several minutes, God forbid, what I would probably do, like if they're saying, oh man, can you believe that happened? I would do something like, wow, flying under the radar. Oh, you're right. Wow, that is upsetting, isn't it? All I'm doing is being present with you. Inside, I'm like, having to do all kinds of chants, to hold my center, bloody hell, Lord, bloody hell, these humans, it's like, wow. I told you the story once where a guy broke in George Harrison's house and stabbed him an inch from his heart, stabbed him. And the whole time, I think this is hilarious, the whole time, George has been a practitioner of a spiritual path for a long time. So this guy breaks in his house and he's wrestling with the guy, and the guy stabs him and continues to try to stab him more. His wife's freaking out. She's screaming, George, fight him off. And George is, he's just doing mantras as the guy's, she's like, shut up and fight him off. He was like, I didn't want to. I was like, hey, if it's my time to go, let me chant my connection to spirit. And he's doing all his spiritual work. It's kind of like that. When you're in the circumstances and they're a little weird, he's doing it externally, but I'm asking you, just keep doing your best to make micro adjustments to hold your center. It's all right for you to go, oh, wow, because they feel heard. They feel supported. If today is the day they look at you and say, can I ask you your perspective of these kinds of things? Maybe then, tactfully, you can plant some new seeds. But do not think that your soul's purpose is to force new seeds upon people, of your wisdom. That's not your soul's purpose. Your actual soul's purpose is closer to blending in with them, flying in under the radar, a spiritual spy, That's more of your soul's purpose, to blend in and bring a difference, more so than standing out and telling them the difference they should be making. Blend in. It doesn't make you less centered, spiritual, powerful, holy. It makes you more so. All right? All right, thank you. We're going to do our collection and closing prayer. I appreciate everybody being here, and there's people from all over the world joining us. I hope that the majority get what I was saying. Thank you. And that it makes a difference. I really do. I pray that really connects with where you're at, what you're ready to learn. Once in a while, there'll be people that go, oh, man, I can't, no, this is too much. If they want to stay, for example, being false empaths, and they want to, stay victims, they might get upset that I'm sort of making light of the false versions of compassion. If that's their thing to be false versions, then they're going to not kind of, like some of the things I'm sharing. That's okay. All right? They can go to falseempathy.com and join that group. Or there's probably one, boguscompassion.com. I'm joking, I mean, just keep going for the real thing, the real thing. He just handed me a flyer to remind, in a couple of weeks, we have a workshop happening here called Exploring Relationships and True Intimacy. I'll be facilitating that. If you're interested, you can join us. It's a few hours only in the afternoon right after service. Exploring Relationships and True Intimacy. All right? All right. I'll leave it for next week. All right. Please stand. We'll do our closing prayer. How's it feel? Feel good today? Good, nice and good. Nutritious soul food. All right. Food for the soul. Holding your center, holding a state of gratitude, love, respect for each other. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we go, God is, I am, we are, and so it is. Peace be with you all. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.